morning, everyone, and aloha. Aloha, and welcome to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College for another great Politics and Eggs. My name is Neil Levesque. I'm the Executive Director. Thank you. I'm the Executive Director here at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. This is a very special series we have, and we're continuing on today. Just a quick note, we have a new president of St. Anselm College, and we're very, very proud. He's just arrived here about a month ago. This is his first Politics and Eggs, and so this is a wonderful occasion. And of course, we'll probably have a little bit more activity between now and February. But I would like to just, everyone can recognize Dr. Joe Favazza. And of course, our sponsors here are the people that allow us to have these breakfasts. We have some wonderful new sponsors, particularly FedCap is our newest sponsor, and we have the president, Christine McMahon, is here today. And we also have their board chair and his wife, their board chair, Mark O'Donohue and Carol Kellerman, are here today. Just a side note that Carol worked for Senator Kennedy in the 1980 campaign. She was telling me stories about that last night. It was great. So very, very good. And just one other recognition is that Todd Fahey is here from AARP, leading AARP through a very interesting time. And of course, our wonderful primary with all of the political activity. Todd, will you stand? Now, on Saturday in New Hampshire, there's going to be just a few people running for president that are going to be in the state, and that is because the Democratic Party has just a huge event taking place across the river, and this is really good for our primary. It really is, and our chair, Ray Buckley, is here today, so I want to just recognize him. He's got a big event tomorrow. No sleep tonight. And of course, our partner in Politics and Eggs is the New England Council, New England's Chamber of Commerce. It's an amazing organization, many, many members, and of course, a great leader, Jim Brett. Jim, I'd like to introduce, like to have you up for purposes of introduction.
I've got a good line for you. Thank you very much, Neil. I just want to thank Neil for all the hard work that he does here and his great staff in New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Neil, I just spoke to the president, and he told me, I'm going to stop all the interviews. You're staying. You're here. So that's good news for all of us. I just want to also congratulate the president for being selected to be the leader of this extraordinary college here. And I'm not surprised they had to go to Commonwealth, Massachusetts to get him. They had at Stonehill College, another great college. But we wish you much success here. You have great legacy here, a great reputation, and I know you'll do very well here. The Politics and Eggs series sponsors, all of them around the room, as Neil alluded to. We have a new one today, the Granite Pathways. We want to thank them. But just remember all the other banners that are here. They are really good corporate citizens of New Hampshire and really New England. And if you see anyone who is affiliated with any of these companies, you should thank them for allowing us to have this wonderful, wonderful series here of Politics and Eggs. It wouldn't be possible without their generous support. If I could just tell you quickly a calendar of events for the New England Council. We have a couple of events coming up that you may be interested in attending. Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island, 1st Congressional District, will be speaking in Providence in the next week. Senator Angus King of Maine will be speaking to the New England Council. Congressman Jim McGovern will be speaking to the New England Council. Congressman Joe Courtney of Connecticut will be speaking to the New England Council all this month. September 17th, we will host the Speaker of the British House of Commons, John Burkhardt, and Needless to say, I think it will be a very, very interesting session in light of what is going on in London and Parliament and Brexit. We will also host this month Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut at what we call the Capital Conversation Series in Washington, D.C. And then finally, next month, we have announced our honorees for the 2019 annual dinner that will be held in Boston with some 1,700 people from all 6 New England states coming together. And one of the recipients will be your own Senator Maggie Hassan. So we're delighted. But today, needless to say, we are delighted to welcome, as we say, aloha, to our good friend, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, as she campaigns for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination here in this great granite state. If elected, she would make history as the first female combat veteran to serve as President of the United States. But reading her bio, she has a knack for making history. She was elected to the Hawaii State Legislature in 2002. She was just 21 years old, becoming the youngest member ever elected in that wonderful state. And she was elected to the House of Representatives in Washington in 2012. She was the first Hindu elected to Congress, as well as one of 2 first female combat veterans elected to the United States Congress, alongside now Senator Tammy Duckworth. She brought with her to Congress extensive experience, both in public office as a Hawaii State Representative and a Honolulu City Councilor, and in military service, having served 2 tours of duty in the Middle East with the Army National Guard. Her service in the military, no doubt, has been an incredible asset to her as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, where she has drawn on her first-hand experience to advocate for our men and women in uniform, our veterans, and our national security. She also serves in the House Financial Services Committee, where she has worked to advance for financial, banking, and housing policies that will best serve the American people. Today, she's running for President of the United States on a platform of ending regime change wars that have cost trillions of dollars, and instead investing in quality health care and education and a green economy. We are truly honored that she could take time to visit Politics and Eggs to tell us more about her vision for our great nation. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Congresswoman from the great state of Honolulu, Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard.
Thank you so much, Jim. Aloha. I'm very impressed and grateful that both of you started out the conversation with aloha this morning. Very appropriate. Bring the aloha all the way from Hawaii here to New Hampshire. Really, thank you so much for this opportunity and this platform to be able to have a great conversation this morning about where we are as a country and where I believe we need to go. Just a few thank yous first. Neil, you've been incredible. Where are you? Where did Neil go? Right here. There he is. He's still working. Been incredible in helping just to get all of this put together, so thank you so much. And thank you very much, Mr. President and St. Anselm College, for hosting this, as well as the New England Council. Thank you, Jim, for your leadership and helping to support and provide this platform. I also want to say thanks to my friend Ray Buckley. Ray and I served as vice chairs of the DNC together for a few years, and grateful for the leadership you're continuing to provide, especially during this very busy Democratic primary that we have before us. I'll start with aloha, because you opened the conversation with aloha, Neil and Jim, and I think it's a very relevant word to deal with what we're facing in this country. How many of you have been to Hawaii before? All right, good, almost half of you. So you're familiar with the word aloha, whether you've been there or not, but a lot of people don't know really that it means a whole lot more than just hello and goodbye, which is, we use it as a greeting of the day, but there's a reason for that. The real meaning of aloha is I come to you with respect. I come to you with an open heart and with care and with compassion and a recognition that we are all connected, that we are all children of God and connected regardless of where we come from, our race, religion, orientation, all of these different things that in this current political climate, unfortunately, are too often used as wedges to divide us, to tear our country apart. And it's really disheartening because this hyper-partisanship and hyper-divisive politics is really undermining the values and principles that we hold dear as Americans, the principles that we hold dear as a country, why we love our country. And so I am really inspired as we go through this campaign. We're visiting different communities, small towns, big cities, in different states across the country, because people are coming out in droves, inspired by this love of country. Yes, disheartened and frustrated with the status quo and where we are, but really driven by this motivation, saying the only way that we bring about real solutions, the only way we bring about real change is by we, the people, standing up and exercising our rights through our democracy to be the change, to be the solution, recognizing that we can't just point our fingers in both directions and think someone else is going to come in and save the day, that our elections are so important because it is when we, the people, stand up that we can really bring about that change that we need to see. And I think it's really important that this be driven by love of country, this remembrance and this recognition that united we stand, divided we fall. And as diverse as our country is in so many ways, whether we're talking about our politics or ideas or the color of our skin, where we come from, how we worship, if we worship, all of these things make up that beautifully diverse fabric of who we are as a country and remind us of how important it is that we stand up and fight for our freedoms, that we take nothing for granted, and that we stand and protect these freedoms that allow us to continue to strive towards that more perfect union that we have. I know one of the main centers of frustration that we see in our current system, why unfortunately in the past we've seen so many people staying home and not voting at all, is that they feel like they've been left behind. That this vision that Abraham Lincoln set out before us of having a government that is truly of, by, and for the people has not been carried out. People feel like there's a few people in Washington who are in positions of great power, who are holding on to that power to serve their own interests while the voices of the people are not being heard. And the consequence of that, and you see this here in New Hampshire, you're very involved in our elections process, that election after election, we find ourselves talking about the same problems over and over and over again, that these problems are not actually being solved. Maybe we put a Band-Aid on it here, or we talk about it for a minute while it's in the headlines, but then it goes away and something else pops up. And meanwhile, the people who are suffering as a result of that problem, whether we're talking about healthcare or immigration, broken criminal justice system, failing infrastructure, climate change, these things capture the imagination or the conversation for a moment, and then it moves on to something else, but the problems remain. And why is that? Why is that? It is because our government is not fulfilling this essential mission of service. Service first and foremost to the people of our country. Now, Jim mentioned in his introduction, I'm a soldier. I still serve in the Army National Guard. This past April was my 16-year anniversary, and just a few weeks ago, I went and did my 2 weeks of active Army duty and training, and this was a mission that actually took place in Indonesia. We did a joint training exercise with the Indonesian military, and we had a small group of us who came from the Hawaii Air and Army National Guard, working with officers in the Indonesian military from across all branches of their military. And the focus of this specific training exercise reinforced a principle that has been drilled in me as a soldier for as long as I've been in the military, and that principle was a problem-solving mindset. And it really struck me how essential this is, obviously, for planning successful military operations, which was our focus there, but how relevant it is to the challenges that we are facing as a country, both in foreign policy as well as domestic policy. a problem-solving mindset. 3 basic steps that go into this problem-solving mindset. First of all, the need to understand the current situation. That we cannot even begin to understand the problem unless we understand where we are. Not looking through things through rose-colored glasses, not looking through things only through a partisan lens, but really being a realist and understanding the situation, the challenges that we face. And number 2, then, understanding the situation, being able to really define the problem. Now, if we step back and really think about the challenges that we face, how often do we see the inability to solve the problem if you don't understand the root cause of it? We've got to understand and define the problem, which leads to the 3rd step, which is being able to identify a clear, achievable goal. Each of these 3 steps being essential to being able to actually really solve the problems that we face. And, you know, I think there's a lot of different examples that we can point to throughout our recent history, both here at home as well as in our foreign policy. Domestic challenges. Healthcare continues to be the top of mind issue for folks across this country. As we see, even as there has been some progress made, there are still tens of millions of people here who are either completely uninsured or underinsured. We still have laws in place in Medicare, for example, that are not dealing with actually solving the problem, serving those who need help the most. I think it's absolutely unacceptable that still, even with the Affordable Care Act's passage, that Medicare is still prohibited from negotiating lower prescription drug prices with these prescription drug companies. The United States is the largest purchaser of prescription drugs in the world. We have an incredible amount of leverage. We should be trying to get the best deal that we can for the people who we are serving. We see these continued challenges with healthcare. We see continued challenges with the immigration crisis we're seeing at the border. Now again, so much is driven by what's in the headlines, and what we see too often is leaders who are reacting to what's in the headline or to the crisis of the day, and there is a crisis, rather than taking a step back and actually looking at what is driving this, what is causing this problem in the first place. Why are there so many people who are coming to seek refuge at our borders? What is the issue with our borders? How has our foreign policy in the past helped to create this instability? And therefore, what change do we need to make so that we're actually solving the root cause of the problem? How are we dealing with our broken legal immigration system? Getting to the root cause of the problem. Criminal justice reform, the opioid epidemic that is taking so many people's lives. This epidemic continues. We're not getting to the root cause of the problem, and therefore not in a position where we're able to stem this epidemic and then begin to actually prevent people from being harmed in the first place. The list goes on and on. Failed war on drugs, I think, is a prime example. When you look at how these 3 steps have not been adhered to by our leaders, a failure to understand the current situation, a failure to truly define the problem, and therefore to create a completely unachievable goal, to the point now where decades later, this war on drugs is continuing to be waged, but at what cost and to what consequence? It's had a devastating impact on people's lives, an overburdened criminal justice system, and it's done nothing to stem the tide of illegal drugs in this country. Gun safety legislation. This is another one that is continuing, unfortunately, to stand at the forefront of the challenges we face because of these ongoing tragedies and shootings and murders. Why is it that we have not yet begun to solve this? Why have we not yet gotten to the point where we're bringing down the number of shootings in this country? Because we're not addressing the root cause of the problem and then coming together as a country to be able to solve this. Instead, what we see is one side pitted against the other, pointing fingers, yelling, shouting, screaming at each other, and forgetting the unity that we have as Americans, that when we put all of the divisiveness aside, really what we're left with is who we are as people and the care that we have for each other, recognizing this is about all of us. These challenges that I've just talked about, they impact every one of us, our communities, not just Democrat communities, not just Republican communities. These are things that concern all of us and therefore require all of us to come together to be a part of that solution. You see these same challenges in our foreign policy and the tremendous toll that it's taken on our country. During my first deployment to Iraq in 2005, we were based in a camp about 40 miles north of Baghdad. It was the height of the war, and it was at a time when we were seeing very severe casualties. I served in a field medical unit during that deployment, and every single day I was confronted with the terribly high human cost of war. How many people, Americans, every single day were being injured, killed in combat. This is something that as a soldier and a veteran hits very close to home, especially as we lost friends of ours, our fellow soldiers there. We came home and their families were not able to welcome them home. We see this ongoing toll being taken for those veterans who've come home with both visible and invisible wounds, scars that stay with them for a very long time. I think there's a cost to these failed foreign policy decisions that reaches far beyond those of us who have worn the uniform or who continue to serve. And that's a cost that is paid for by every single one of you who may be watching from home, every single American. But this isn't something that we often think about, but when we connect the dots, we see how these failed foreign policy decisions have a direct impact on every one of the domestic challenges that we face, every one of the needs that we feel in our families and our communities. I served on the city council as well as in the state legislature in Hawaii. So for our local elected officials here, the frustration is often we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough money to pay for the things that we need in our communities. Serving on the city council, you're talking about potholes, sewers, water, safe parks, neighborhoods, law enforcement, firefighters, the basic needs that have a daily impact on our people, our residents, our citizens. And yet, so often we're told there's just not enough money. You've got to squeeze so much out of every single dollar to try to meet those needs. Yet, at the same time, since 9/11 alone, our country has spent over $6 trillion, on wasteful, counterproductive wars that have not made our country more safe. They have not been about national security. They have actually strengthened terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, terrorist group that attacked us on 9/11. They have taken a toll on our men and women in uniform, cost us so many lives. They've cost lives of the people in the countries where we wage these wars. And they have cost us as a people tremendously as we see these dollars being taken out of our schools, being taken out of our healthcare system, being taken out of our communities and our community needs and infrastructure. So you can't separate these issues, which is why it's so important as we talk about this problem-solving mindset. This is the kind of mindset I would bring to serve you as president. Yes, to solve these problems, to build coalitions, to bring people together, to recognize that the only way we move forward is when we move forward together. The experience that I bring to this job of president and the most important responsibility the president has as commander-in-chief. Yes, my time in the military, but also my time in Congress, almost 7 years serving on the Armed Services Committee, on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the Homeland Security Committee, understanding the importance of our national security, making sure we have a strong, trained, and capable military, and also understanding that our failed foreign policy is undermining those objectives, which is why, as president, I will end these wasteful, counterproductive wars, the likes of which we've seen in Iraq, the war I served in Libya and Syria, and unfortunately the war that President Trump is pushing us closer and closer towards, this war with Iran. A war that would be far more costly and devastating than anything we ever saw in the Iraq War, would take more American lives, would create more refugees, would cost us as taxpayers, trillions more. End these wasteful wars. Work to end this new Cold War that we're in with escalating tensions between the United States and other nuclear armed countries like Russia and China, the arms race that's kicked off as a result, and instead redirect these precious resources that would have otherwise been used on these wars and on these weapons, and use them to serve the needs of our people, because those needs are great and they are pressing. It's time that we get our priorities straight in this country, put the well-being of our people ahead of profits and partisanship and divisiveness, and bring these principles that are at the heart of every soldier, every service member, the principles of service above self, to the White House. Restoring a government truly of, by, and for the people. This is what's driving me. This is what's motivating me, my love of country and my appreciation for who we are as Americans and where we need to go. I think there's nothing but opportunity ahead of us if we are driven by this love and respect for one another, this appreciation for the principles and freedoms that we hold dear, and the work that we have ahead of us to be able to work for the well-being of our people and our country and the protection of our planet. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, to join you today. I look forward to our conversation. Thank you.